Good morning.
Good morning.
Debated on what question to ask. I'm not looking for a show of hands. But I should suppose maybe the question I'll ask is, how many of you, and again, don't raise your hand, how many of you would feel comfortable walking out the doors this morning right now and sitting down and having a Bible study with someone? They ask you, hey, tell me what I need to do to be a Christian. How many of you would feel a little bit of anxiety, a tightening in the chest, a fear of saying the wrong thing, not knowing the right answer? What we're going to do the next couple of Sundays that I'm here with you is a 3-part lesson here that will start in the book of Mark, and we're going to look at the life of Christ. And I've done this lesson a number of different ways. This is not something that a Bible study that I came up with. It was one that we did in a Bible class in college and was instructed to adapt it for your personal use. And so that's what I've done. I've gone through this study in Mark a number of different ways. Most of the ways that I've done it is just on an individual basis with someone studying the gospel. But I've also done it as a Bible class on instructing how to do study in evangelism. You're sitting there with someone and you want to teach them about God, about Jesus. We've done it like that, and I've preached it. I think it'll be a little bit shorter. It's a 3-part lesson, as I said. I've done it all in one lesson before. That was a long sermon. We're not going to do that this morning. The 3 parts, though, the first one is, as you see in the bulletin, is going to be Jesus the Lord. Now, the next Sunday, it won't be next Sunday, but the following Sunday will be Jesus the man. And then the last Sunday, we'll look at first the bad news and then the good news. And the way this lesson is sort of made up makes it really easy for anybody to just sit down, pick up their Bible, and study with someone. As Chad read for us this morning in 1 Corinthians chapter 2, we don't need to be bringing big fancy words, big fancy Bible studies. There's a number of really easy Bible studies that you can pick up. If you've ever seen the open Bible study pamphlets, the yellow and the blue and the pink and the weird orangish, yellowish, gold color pamphlets, those are great. They're great. It starts at a really good place. Is the Bible the inspired Word of God? That should be the first question. If you're going to study the Bible, and if they don't accept the Bible as the Word of God, well, you need to start somewhere else. You need to start with studying why the Bible is the Word of God. But when it gets down to it, studying who Jesus is and how He lived and how He died and rose again, that's the gospel. That's the gospel message, and that's all that we should be bringing to people in the first place. I believe, Brother Bell, you mentioned maybe it was in Bible class last week about Muscle and a Shovel. It's a great book. I've read the book. One of the most inspiring figures in the book is not the author, but I believe the man's name is Randall, who would just encourage Bible study, daily Bible study, and would have a biblical answer for questions that were asked of him about the Bible. And if he didn't know the answer, and this is important, if he didn't know the answer, I don't know. Let me study and we can find out together. Not just making something up. Not just thinking, hey, well, this is how I think, this is how I believe. Let's find out what the Bible says. And while that's a great book, we should be bringing the pure gospel to the lost. Statistically, people who are young 20-something is what the study was done, but I would imagine that it would apply across generational gaps there. But most people in America, and I say most people, it was something between 80 and 90% would agree to studying and talking about Jesus if they were asked. We've got a responsibility as Christians to teach the gospel, because nobody else is going to if we don't. So let's open up and we're going to look at a couple of different stories that illustrate who Jesus is as the Lord. And we're going to open up in Mark. Mark sort of gets right into the action in the Gospels. We're going to look in chapter 4, beginning in verse 35, and we're going to just go right through this. This is a very linear portion, a very easy place to open up. Some exciting things are happening in the Gospel here. We're going to see some miracles, some very obvious miracles performed in front of a lot of witnesses. And so when you're studying the gospel of someone and finding this place here where we're going to see Jesus being demonstrated as the Lord over natural disasters, the physical elements, we're going to see Jesus being Lord over the spiritual world, demon-possessed man. We're going to see Jesus demonstrating his lordship over disease, and then finally over death. And then next week, it's going to jump around a little bit. It's going to pick up in Mark, but we're going to jump through the gospel and end up at the crucifixion of Jesus and the resurrection. Starting here in chapter 4, verse 35 of Mark, you should go back a little bit in this scene here and to get a good idea of where Jesus was. Not his physical location, but if you've ever been around people and a lot is being required of you. Jesus' case here, he was doing a lot of teaching. He was around a lot of people asking him questions, challenging him. He was tired. And his idea was, all right, we're going to get in the boat. We're going to go across to the other side in verse 35 so he could leave the crowd and retreat a little bit. And that wasn't necessarily what was going to happen. As you go here in this passage, and I like Mark because of the little details, the little things here that we can see as they get out and they set out in the crowd, leaving the crowd in verse 36, they took him with them in the boat, just as he was, and the other boats were with them, and a great windstorm arose, and the waves were breaking into the boat so that the boat was already filling. This was before bilge pumps. The bilge pump was you and your sailor friends bailing it out with your bucket. That was the bilge pump. No running lights on the boat. You're out there in a storm. I would imagine overcast sky, couldn't see the moon if it was up, couldn't see the stars to navigate. They didn't have the GPS on there and the depth finder to know if there was any rocks ahead. And the water starts coming in the boat. I've been out shrimping a couple of years ago on the river. And there's a point where we get out at Doctor's Lake and we're cruising along and it's fine. And we're going south towards the Shands Bridge, and you turn that corner and the wind just hits you like a wall. Well, I'm with my brother, Daniel, and he's letting me drive the boat. It's my dad's boat. But I'm driving, and I didn't want him to think that I was a big chicken. And so we're full on. And we're crashing down. My feet left the deck a couple of times. It wasn't scary enough where water was coming in because of the waves. It was coming in maybe because we were splashing it up and it was blowing that hard. And we finally get there, and I said, man, that was pretty intense, wasn't it? And he says, yeah. I said, were you scared? He said, yeah, I was scared. And I said to him, okay, yeah, me too. I just didn't want you to think I was a chicken. If you picture, though, the scene. They're out there in a sailboat. There's some other boats with them, and the wind is so terrible that these sailors are scared. The water is filling the boat. The only thing they can do is pray and bail the water out. And we see Jesus, verse 38, asleep on a cushion in the stern. How tired do you have to be in order to be in a storm so scary that the sailors, the seasoned fishermen, are scared, and he is so tired that he's passed out on a pillow in the front of the boat? I guess that's the front, the stern. That's the front, right? Yeah, see it straight. Okay, front of the boat. They woke him and they rebuked him. Excuse me, I'm in the wrong place there. Finish in verse 38. I'm getting ahead of myself. Teacher, do you not care that we are perishing? I think that if your Bible doesn't have an exclamation point with a question mark, then they should go back and fix it. I don't imagine that was a calm, composed question. Jesus, do you not care that we're about to die? No, there was some excitement, some concern, some worry, some fear. Do you not care that the boat is about to sink and we're going to drown? It's not like they didn't know who Jesus was either. You think, what could you do in this scene? What could we do? Hold on for dear life. Hope that you could find a piece of wood to float. Bail the water out as fast as you can. And he awoke, in verse 39, rebuked the wind and said to the sea, Peace, be still. Now there's some exclamation points. And the wind ceased, and there was a great calm. I can imagine all you could hear was maybe the drip from the sail, the splash of the bucket, this great calm. You couldn't see anybody around you, and now maybe the other boats are starting to come into sight. You're thinking, that was a close call. He said to them in verse 40, Why are you so afraid? Have you no faith? And they were filled with great fear and said to one another, Who is this that even the wind and the sea obey him? That's going to be sort of a common emotion, I guess we could call it. A common emotion among these people who see the things that the Lord could do. See the things that Jesus performed. He just calmed the sea. I don't know, maybe they woke him up. Don't you care that we're about to die? Maybe they just wanted a hug. Maybe they wanted somebody else to bail with them. Just somebody to commiserate their impending doom. I don't know what they expected if it wasn't him to calm the sea. But it wasn't a gradual calming. Mark says that it was a great calm immediately. We're going to see that repeated as well. It wasn't something that sort of took its time. It wasn't that just maybe the wind sort of blew itself out. But they were in the middle of this great storm, scary enough that these sailors thought they were going to die, and then they weren't. Who is this man? Who is this Jesus? Who is this Lord that commands the wind and the sea? All we could do is hope that we weren't going to die. Bail the water out. Jesus, the Lord, commands the wind and the sea. This is no ordinary person that we're talking about here. This is not just some guy that's a smart man, a prophet, a good teacher, someone who could stand up and entertain a crowd. This was a man who had the power of God. Jesus, Lord of disaster. What could you do? And what did that man do? Let's go on to chapter 5 now. In verse 1, after Jesus was attempting to escape the crowds for a little bit of a reprieve, he's woken up in the middle of the night because of his faithless followers were scared they were going to die. In verse 1, they came to the other side of the sea, to the country of the Gerasenes, and when Jesus had stepped out of the boat, immediately, right away, first thing, met him out of a tomb a man with an unclean spirit. He lived among the tombs. Notice some of these little details. There's been some strange things that have happened to me over the years. Nothing that would compare to this. He lived among the tombs, and no one could bind him anymore, not even with a chain. For he had often been bound with shackles and chains, but he wrenched the chains apart and he broke the shackles in pieces. No one had the strength to subdue him. Night and day among the tombs and on the mountains, he was always crying out and cutting himself with stones. And when he saw Jesus from afar, he ran and fell down before him. And crying out with a loud voice, he said, What have I to do with me? What have you to do with me, Jesus, Son of the Most High God? I adjure you by God, do not torment me. Jesus has this conversation, but there's one other little thing that I think that we need to notice here. Later on in this passage, we see that he's there fully clothed. I think it would be scary enough to get out on this beach after the night that you just had as a follower. I'm not picturing myself as Jesus here. I'm picturing myself as just one of the guys. After seeing what I did on the water, being half scared to death, and you get out and you're there, and here comes this guy, was living in the tomb, so he looked rough for one. I mean, he cut himself. He was strong enough to tear chains apart. He was bleeding from open wounds from where he cut himself, but he was also not wearing anything. That's an alarming scene to me. That is something that would make me want to just go get back in the boat. Let's keep going, guys. We don't need to deal with this guy. Kids, let's stay together. Okay, we'll cross to the other side of the street. Maybe we'll call the police. That's what we would do. At least that's what I would do. There's some people, those tender hearts that, bring in stray animals and things like that, and they would probably want to help this guy. But even still, there wasn't really a whole lot anybody could do. We saw what man could do. They couldn't do anything with the guy. They tried to chain him up so he wouldn't hurt himself, I imagine, or hurt other people. But he just ripped the chains apart. Cutting himself, screaming, not wearing anything. Probably smelled like death because he was living in tombs. What Jesus does, though, he talks to him. This guy runs up and he does something that Jesus has not yet done. He identifies Jesus as the Son of the Most High God. And he asks Jesus a question. He asks him not to torment. The demon asks Jesus, please don't torment me. The demon understood that Jesus was the authority figure. The demon that was possessing the man understood that there was nothing that he could do to prevent Jesus from casting him away into utter darkness. Jesus was the authority, not the demon. Jesus was the one that would grant permission or deny the permission. I adjure you by God, do not torment me in verse 7. Verse 8, he was saying to them, come out of the man, you unclean spirit. Hollywood makes it look differently in different movies, depending on what movie and director and whoever, of these different demon possessions. I don't know how it looked, but as the demon was talking to Jesus, Jesus is casting him out. And then he asks, what's your name? Not talking to the man yet. Still the conversation with the demon. He replied, my name is Legion, for we are many. He begged him earnestly not to send them out of the country. And so in verse 11 and 12, they see some pigs. Send us to the pigs on this cliff. And can you imagine these pigs? I don't know how many pigs there were. A legion was a whole lot more than just 10. A herd of pigs, though. Maybe I'm warped, I don't know. But you see these pigs, all of a sudden they get crazed with this demon called Legion, and they just run off the cliff into the sea. A whole herd of pigs galloping off into the ocean or the sea. What can we do? Nothing. Jesus, however, gets rid of the demon by sending in some pigs, and they run into the water, off a cliff, squealing the whole way down. He gave them permission to leave there. That's also important. Because we see these demons making a profession of faith. We talked several weeks ago about the different kinds of faith. This was a profession of faith. Belief is another word for the faith that we're talking about. They believed that Jesus was who he was. But that faith was not enough to save them. That faith was not enough to make them a clean spirit. Because even James says the demons believe and tremble. It's not enough just to have faith. It's not enough just to believe. We got to do something about it. He gave them permission. They entered the pigs. About 2,000 rushed down the steep bank into the sea and drowned in the sea. So that's something I'm not going to say that I would like to see, but it certainly would be funny in an animated movie about this scene of 2,000 pigs jumping off a cliff into the ocean. And then these guys that were taking care of these pigs ran and told people what had happened, and everybody came out, and they saw Jesus and the demon-possessed man, the one who had been the legion, sitting there clothed and in his right mind. This is verse 15. And they were afraid. It doesn't say they were afraid of legion when the legion was still in the man. It doesn't say they were afraid when he was breaking the chains and cutting himself. They were afraid when Jesus cast the demon out, though. They were afraid to see the man now sitting there, not shouting and carrying on, cutting himself, and weren't. They were afraid then. Because they had done everything that human knowledge would know to do. And yet this man, the Lord, who is the Lord not just of the physical, but he was the Lord of the spiritual as well. I think it's interesting to note that the man wanted to go with Jesus when he was leaving. And Jesus said, no, you need to go back and tell everybody what the Lord has done for you. And he did. And in another part of the Bible, another part of the Gospels, we see that when Jesus goes back to this place, there was a lot of people that believed and came to meet Jesus. Because this man who had was demon-possessed, had done his job. He went and told people, and they believed because of the things that he told them about Jesus. Next look here, we've got two scenes sort of in one. And they get back in the boat and crossed again to the other side. And a great crowd gathered about him, and this is verse 21, and he was beside the sea. And then came one of the rulers of the synagogue, Jairus. And he fell down and said, my little girl is about to die. Can you please come with me and heal her? And Jesus says, yes, I'll go with you. And he went with him, and this crowd followed. In verse 24, it says that it thronged about him. You ever been in one of those crowds? You go to Disney World, and it seems like it's always like this, where you're just always getting jostled. You can't really move a whole lot. Just picture walking down this dusty road, and everybody just sort of pressing in on Jesus every side. And there was a woman who had a discharge of blood for 12 years. And I'd like to note here that in Leviticus chapter 15, verse 19 and following, that a woman who had this condition, whether it was the monthly deal, or if it was like it was with this woman apparently for 12 years, she was unclean. Anything that she touched, if she sat on it or anything, she was considered unclean. And that'll come back to play in just a minute. She had this discharge of blood for 12 years and had suffered much, verse 26, by many physicians. What can man do? We can go to the doctor, and they can poke and prod and test and give medicine that makes you seem sicker than you were before, and maybe you'll get better, maybe you won't. She did everything that humans could possibly do, and yet she still was bleeding continually for 12 years. And so she sees Jesus and says in her mind in verse 28, if I touch even his garment, I'll be made well. This woman's faith was such that she felt that it wasn't even that Jesus had to direct his attention to her and speak the words. She could just touch his clothes, just the bottom part of his jacket, and she'll be made well. Well, that's exactly what happened. Immediately, 29, immediately, this thing that had been tormenting this woman for 12 years stopped. Jesus, verse 30, perceiving in himself that the power had gone out from him, immediately turned about the crowd and said, "Who touched my garments?" Really, Jesus? Who touched you? His disciples said, "What do you mean, who touched you? Don't you see the crowd? Everybody's touching you. What are you asking who touched you for?" He kept looking. But the woman in verse 33, knowing what had happened to her, came in fear and trembling and fell down before him and told him the whole truth. Now, she probably had more reason than anybody else to be afraid of what had happened because, like I said, Leviticus, under the old law, which this is where they were operating under, she was unclean and she touched someone who was a teacher of the law. She did something she wasn't supposed to. She touched him. Now Jesus should be considered unclean. She's afraid, though. For whatever reason, I think that's maybe why. Verse 34, "Daughter, your faith has made you well. Go in peace and be healed of your disease." Now, going back to Jairus, I think I would be pretty frustrated at this point. An important guy in town. I got there first. He's going to my house to heal my daughter. And now we got to take this little side trip to figure out who this old woman is that was bleeding. And now somebody comes and says that, "Hey, don't bother Jesus. Your daughter's dead." Can you imagine the distress that man may have been in? The concern that, well, if only we hadn't gotten stopped here, maybe my daughter would still be alive. And Jesus says, "Don't fear, only believe," in verse 36. They get there, and there's this big commotion. One of the things that was common in that time was there would be people there that were kind of like professional mourners. The women dressed all in black from head to toe, and they'd be there wailing and hooting and hollering and making this big commotion, and that's what's going on here. Everybody's upset. This little girl died. It's a tragedy. And Jesus only allows Peter, James, and John, the mom and dad, to go in, and he takes the little girl by her hand, and he whispers, I think, it's the way I picture it, but he says to her, "Talitha kumi," which means, "Little girl, I say to you, arise." And after CPR and the clear and CPR, and they give her a bunch of adrenaline and this, that, and the other, she finally comes around, maybe takes a really deep breath, and she stays in the hospital for a couple of days. No. Immediately the girl got up and began to walk. She was 12 years of age. It wasn't a little baby. She could walk. And they were immediately overcome with amazement or fear. Who is this man? Who is this Jesus that not only can command the physical wind and sea and the waves and keep us from drowning in the ocean and cast out demons and heal this woman without even having to know that she was there, and then goes and this girl was dead. Dead all the way. And he tells her to get up, and right away she gets up, and he says, "Give her something to eat. She's probably hungry." Who is this man? Paul says, "I didn't come to you with fancy words. I didn't come to you with several doctorates behind my name in the Hebrew language so we can understand the law better. And I've read all what everybody has to say about everything that there is to do with God. And I came with this really nice lesson and this fancy handout and a PowerPoint." He says, "The only thing that I wanted to do was to teach Christ and Him crucified." The message that's going to change the world, the message that when you go to work, the message that's going to change this community is not something that you're going to be able to do from behind the pulpit. It's not something that you're going to be able to do in the classrooms. It's not something that you're going to be able to feed enough, give enough money to. The power that is going to change lives is the message of Jesus Christ. This is a simple message. We're not talking about any fancy, there's going to come a point when somebody's going to ask you a question that's hard. Just talking with Miss Lottie last night about some hard stuff in the Bible. There's difficult passages. There is a lot of things that people believe that are not true about the Bible. Those things will need to be addressed. But the saving power, the thing that people need to know the most, the thing that people need to know first, is that Jesus is the Son of God, and only He has the power to save. Jesus goes on to perform a lot of other miracles. John says that there's so much that the whole world, if we wrote about it, wouldn't be able to contain the volumes. Jesus said and did a lot of things. This is just a sampling that Mark gives here, and this is just in 2 chapters. Jesus is going to go on, die on the cross, and raise again on the 3rd day so that we could have forgiveness of our sins. That's the gospel message. That's the simple truth that we need to bring, and that's the simple message that every single person who understands who Jesus is could bring and share with someone. Their neighbor, their coworker, their friend, their family. Are you going into all the world and preaching the gospel? If you're not, nobody is. The only person that's going to bring the gospel is the church. Are you bringing it? If you need to put Christ on in baptism and be a part of His church, you can have your sins washed away. But I encourage you right now to take up the Bible and teach Jesus Christ and Him crucified. Won't you come as we stand and sing, and the gospel is open to you.